Beyond the Bell, Bloomberg's comprehensive cross-platform coverage of the U.S. market close starts right now.
And right now, we are 2 minutes away from the end of the trading day. Romaine Bostick alongside Katie Greifeld. We're counting you down to the closing bell. Here to help take us beyond the bell. It's a global simulcast with our friends Carol Massar and Tim Stenovec. Welcome to our audiences across all of our Bloomberg platforms here on a soggy Monday afternoon in New York City. And a somewhat interesting market right now. Actually seeing a lot of price activity to the upside here, Carol, as we get closer to the bells.
Kind of interesting, right? Seeing some buying here into the close. Having said that, really one group that was a standout throughout the day was the energy group.
Yes.
Among the major industry groups in the S&P 500, top of the list, up about 1% overall. And what's interesting is, we're on track for a quarterly gain in the energy names, the biggest quarterly gain since March of 2022. We know the reason, right, in terms of supply curbs by Russia and Saudi Arabia. That's your big macro story, even though we cooled a little bit in oil today, but nonetheless, really a standout in today's trade.
Yeah, but kind of hard to find a standout today with, although we are seeing some buying into the close, still a really choppy session, Katie. And look, it's a holiday and volume's low.
Volume is low, about 10% lower if you look at the S&P 500's 20-day trading average. The point about energy, though, is interesting. The fact that you do see a little disconnect between what the equities are doing and what actual oil is doing, but energy just off to the races today.
Yeah, that's a really good point, right? We're back below $90 a barrel, but nonetheless, the trend has been for a stronger one. We're going to watch it, though, to see if somehow global economic demand is decreasing, and maybe that plays a little bit into it, maybe longer term.
All right, as we get the closing bells here in New York City, what had been a really mixed market here, from oscillations, from gains to losses, and now back again to gains. The Dow Jones Industrial Average higher by about 40 points, or 0.1%. The S&P 500 higher by about 18 points, or 0.4%. A similar move higher on a percentage basis for the NASDAQ Composite, and a similar move higher on a percentage basis for the Russell 2000, Carol.
Yeah, the Usher Index, though, on a tear. I saw what you guys did before.
Are we going to talk about Taylor Swift at any point? I know we have some stuff to get.
Later.
Okay,
All right, the S&P,
okay.
let's do the divide. 300 names to the upside, 199 to the downside. Katie, for unchanged.
All right, I'll save the Taylor Swift comments. Let's take a look at some of these industry groups here. Like we were saying, energy, top of the pile. That's true on the industry group level as well, up 1.3%. You can see also chips getting some love. So too are some of the auto names. Actually more green than red. If you do look into the red, though, it's definitely some strong trends there. Household products, for example, off by about 0.5%. Food and beverage off by 0.7%. The staples today really taking a beating.
All right, so let's get to some of the individual gainers, if we may. And here's one. It's actually, I think, the number 2 gainer in the S&P 500, number 1 gainer in the NASDAQ 100. We're talking about GE Healthcare. I couldn't find any real catalyst. This company, though, on pace for its worst full quarter since being spun off from GE Electric last year. But this is after climbing about 41% in the first quarter, losing about 1% in the second quarter. It's down about 18% in the third quarter with less than 1 week to go. So this one, though, nonetheless, investors buying into it, up more than 3% in today's session. So talk about a wacky year for this one since being spun off. Amazon, you know the story. We've all been talking about it. It's big kind of AI play, if you will, spending as much as $4 billion on Anthropic. So it's been a crucial partner, and this is helping it move more aggressively into AI. There's a chip component to this. There's a cloud component to this. Read it. It's on the Bloomberg, but nonetheless, Amazon is standout, up 2% at its highs, up about 1.7% at its close today. And then CarMax, top in the S&P 500, heavier volume than usual. Keep in mind, they've got earnings on Thursday, so we'll be breaking down some numbers then. Wedbush upgrading the company to outperform from neutral amid improving market share performance. We'll find if that is truly the case on Thursday when they report. Also upping their price target to 90 from 85. Stock closing at 77 and change, just under 78, so some room to run there. It's up about 30% year to date. 12% of the float is shorted. It's still down 50% from its high back in November of 2021.
And I just want to add one to your list. Sonoma was on a tear today, up about 12% WSM ticker on the back of no real news.
It's that kind of a day, right? Like I can't tell you how many names I pulled up and there was nothing.
Yeah, it was. Same with decliners. It was actually tough to find stories behind some of these decliners, but I managed to find some. Let's start with HP
I think
Inc.
Romaine bought
HPQ.
like a $12,000 couch and a $15,000 shelf.
Yeah,
at
but you still have to wait 18 months to actually get it. HP falling 1.76% today. This after Berkshire Hathaway and Warren Buffett disclosed selling $125 million in shares. And its indirect sale, it took place in 3 transactions between the 20th and 22nd. That's according to a filing with the SEC. And I looked up a few minutes ago onto the screen what you guys were doing. I saw Joe Doe on the show talking about this story. Alcoa shares of the largest U.S. aluminum producer falling today to a 52-week low, down more than 6% on the day. This after the company abruptly named a new CEO. William F. Opplinger, who had been COO and before that CFO, will become the new CEO, replacing Roy C. Harvey.
Yeah, that was an interesting story because, usually, Tim, aren't there like succession plans? They kind of telegraph when it's
This is the board met yesterday. The board met yesterday, put out a filing this morning and said, hey, and perhaps that's why we're seeing shares down 6%. But this guy's been at the company for a long time, and he's worked in many different roles. So, we'll see what he ends up doing. Comes at a tough time for the industry, though. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about Nike. This is actually, I think, among the most interesting stories in terms of stock-moving stories today. This is after Jefferies analysts downgraded the company along with Foot Locker and Urban Outfitters from buy to hold. The reason is because Jefferies did a survey and found that nearly 90% of respondents who they surveyed, about 600 of them, these are folks who have outstanding student loan debt. They were somewhat worried about being able to meet all of their monthly expenses. So Nike, they said, Jefferies said, faces a risk from slower spending by those with outstanding student loan debt, as well as challenges from China. We're going to hear from Nike a little bit later in the week. The 28th is when that company is reporting earnings.
All right, let's take a look at what happened in the yield space because that's where a lot of the action was. Another shift in the yield curve here with a lot of the selling this time on the longer end of the curve. A 30-year yield up about 14 basis points here on the day. And we talk about this idea as to exactly what's being priced in. 4.66 right now on a 30-year yield, highest since 2011. A 10-year yield still camped out around its highest level since 2007, and a 2-year yield just a smidge below its highest levels since 06 here. So 5% on a 2-year yield, 4.5 on a 10, and 4.6 on a 30-year yield. The big question is, I guess, is what are people actually pricing in? Is it higher for longer rates? Is it economic conditions, or is it something else, Katie?
Is it more supply? Yeah. Is it the fact that maybe the U.S. economic growth outlook isn't so bad? Tim, what were you going to say?
I was going to say that I asked this exact same question to Ira Jersey a little earlier, and he said the market is now starting to price in a no landing scenario when just a few weeks ago we were pricing in a soft landing scenario.
I don't know. Did he define no landing?
Right?
It doesn't make any sense.
Well,
tell Ira it doesn't make any sense.
Did you?
You tell Ira.
No. I hope he's watching.
Katie Kaminsky was on with us from Alpha Simplex, and in mid-August, she kind of blew our minds when we said, well, how high could we go on the 10-year? And she said, maybe 6%. But what everybody talked about in this discussion we had today is that this inflation premium is continuing to be, people are trying to adjust for it. So
can we add a counterpoint to that? Because Katie and I interviewed a little earlier Gargi Chowdhury over at BlackRock, and the idea that she has in her latest fall outlook for the markets, she actually saw some buying opportunities, although she pointed out it's primarily in the belly of the curve, so think like a 5-year yield instead of going out too long in duration. But the idea is there are some people looking at the level of yields and saying that there's still a yield story, but there's also a big price story in there as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about what usually the pitch for the belly of the curve is, it's that, okay, maybe the Fed isn't going to cut next year, but they're going to have to cut sometime in the next 5 years, maybe not because there's a downturn, but they want to get out of highly restrictive territory back somewhat to neutral, and that's where you get your rate cuts.
Yeah, but the big question is when does that happen? And there's so much, so much can happen between now and the next couple of years.
Does Carol Massar actually know who Usher is?
Definitely.
What does that mean?
What were you guys doing? Why were we talking about Usher?
We interviewed Usher, Taylor Swift, and Kim K.
He's headlining the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Oh, I saw that. Yeah.
The Super Bowl halftime show.
That's pretty cool.
Tell me you're not a big football fan?
No, I am.
Okay. It's taken over the world. You don't have to be a football fan. Half the people just
I'd
watch
like to see Usher and Taylor Swift together.
Really? Interesting.
Well, okay.
Like dating?
Like,
because
what do you mean
that's where
together?
my mind is.
Yeah, because that's all Katie's been talking about is Taylor Swift showing up at some Chiefs game.
She sent me a message. Katie's very excited. She even sent me a message about it.
I haven't talked to anyone about this.
You need to calm down.
Are you more interested in the football side of this, Katie? Because over the last couple of years, you have become more of a football fan. Or is this more of a Taylor Swift
I've been
fan?
cosplaying as a football fan, so this is an exciting meeting of my worlds. I think I am a little bit into football, and I'm very into Taylor Swift. So this season just got a lot more exciting.
Has she ever performed at the Super Bowl?
No. I don't think so.
No, remember, it's a trick question. Remember they invited her a couple years ago, and then she had that dispute with, what was it, Scooter Braun, one of those producers where she couldn't perform half her music, so they were like, well.
We all know that when Romaine asks a question, he already knows the answer to it.
You're on to me.
Yeah.
After 2 years, you finally caught on.
I just can't wait till she works in all the football terminology into a song, right?
Oh my God.
You know there's going to be a breakup.
I'm so.
There's going to be a great song.
Hey.
Carol.
Come on.
Carol.
Come on. You know.
She was there with his
very
mom. That's real.
Yeah.
You don't just hang out with somebody's mother.
I'm bullish. I think this is great. I'm excited to see how this turns out.
I got negative yields that I could sell you.
Okay.
Does that make sense? I don't know.
You know.
All right. We got to run. More Taylor Swift tomorrow because I feel like every day there's a story that has a Taylor Swift connection, whether it's about the economy. Yeah, fingers crossed. Just for you, Katie. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Planning meetings.
I can only imagine. We will catch you tomorrow across platform, radio, TV, YouTube, and of course, Bloomberg Originals. Join us for Beyond the Bell and Countdown to the Close all tomorrow.